Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to G-Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And in this episode, I'm going to show you a few things that I did to modify my Harbor Freight 10 by 12 greenhouse here that helped it stand up in the winds when they got really strong. All right, one of them I mentioned already was making that little metal clip right there. It's a Z-shaped clip that holds the upper panel in place on the back wall of this unit, because they made these two-piece panels so they all fit in the box most likely. Otherwise they could have done full-size panels if they had a bigger box. But anyway, they gave us these little tiny clips right up here. You see those little pieces of junk up there. They don't really hold anything. Now the distance between the bottom panel and the top panel for the overlap is just about 3/8 of an inch there. But because of some shifting and movement that I had from all the heavy winds, this one is more like an inch. So I'm going to show you how I made those for modifying, because I'm making two more. One is going to go there, which will be a 1-inch unit, and one that'll go there, which will be a 3/8 inch unit. So I'll have two 1-inches and a 3/8. And that should hold those panels in place really well from now on. All right, the other thing I had to do was, you remember, at about 38 miles per hour or so, the winds had bent these rafters up here on the roof, because the wind was coming from that direction, and it was just pressing down on this thing like a giant sail, and it ended up bending it. And then as soon as it bent, of course, the panels popped out because they were no longer held in by the sides. And that was a pain in the neck. So I got these two little pieces of 1x2 furring strips, and I put one right underneath the support right there at 8 feet. It goes right to the ground just perfectly with a board underneath, so it doesn't dig into the ground. Now, those, I got one here and one there, so I split this into thirds. And in 38 mile-an-hour winds yesterday, or the day before, it actually did not cause any problems at all with the roof. The only thing I did have to do was I popped that panel out right there because it was already halfway out. And as soon as I did, that relieved the pressure that was bowing that wall out there, and that helped hold things up. And then I moved my tote out there and put it up against the wall to help hold it some more. So those are some of the things that I was mentioning. Now, you could do things like you can get yourself a 10-foot 2x4 and go across the inside here with that and fasten it to these beams where this little aluminum strut is. Those aluminum struts really aren't strong enough for that high of a wind. Now, if you're not getting that high of a wind, don't worry about it. This thing will hold up, and like I said, up to 38 miles per hour, that's when it failed. So up to that point, you're fine. But if you're not getting wind stronger than that, your Harbor Freight 10 by 12 unit should hold you just great. Now, they did say, it's in the instructions, never to face the doors towards the windward side where the wind is coming from, because they're not strong enough to hold. And you don't have any main support in the center here. You got a wide opening here. It's a 6-foot opening, so you can come in and out with large items. I pointed these to the inside of my garden house, because that's got shade cloth all over it, and that helps break the wind that comes from that direction, and doesn't get hit too hard on this. But what does happen is the air gets around the doors and then inflates this thing like a balloon, and that's where I had the problem with the back wall. Okay, the last thing I did was, because they don't really make you any good locks for these roof vents. Okay, there's no way to really lock them into place in a down position. So what I did was I got some 15-ounce vegetable cans, and I bent some nails, as you can see. Let me get a little closer. Let's see, where are we? There we go. Okay, so I bent some nails, and I put the heads down inside when I filled them up with concrete. Just mixed some concrete and filled them up with concrete. And then I hung those through the holes that usually go on the hold open pin up there to hold them open. So that's weight is holding them down so that they don't flap up in the wind. Okay. So I made 4 of those to go around here, and that worked out pretty good. All right. So that being said, I'm going to quickly get out of here. Oh, the other thing was my Desert-Crete floor. Okay, what I did was I mixed Portland cement with just desert sand and dirt mix. It's got a little bit of clay, a little bit of everything in it. And I just took the big rocks out. I mixed that together as a dry mix, spread it out on the floor and leveled it. And that's a good 4 inches thick. I mean, a real good 4 inches thick. And then I sprinkled it with water until it was saturated. Then I went through with a hand tamper and tamped it down and flattened it out. Now I'm kicking up a little bit of dust in there, but that floor is still as hard as concrete. So just working out just fine. All right. So we're going to head up and I'll show you how I made those clips, and I want to do that kind of quickly because I also want to show you a thing called a survival heater. So, you know, this is going to be something that you could hook up onto your car or truck or whatever if you were stranded out in the middle of nowhere in a snowstorm and it was going to drop well down below freezing. You're going to get a hard freeze. Well, that's kind of hard to keep warm even with a lot of blankets. You know, so you can bury yourself in the blankets, but then you're breathing your exhaust. You're not getting fresh air, so you got to stick your head out to get fresh air, and then that fresh air lets cold in, and you could freeze your lungs too if you got your lungs full of hot, moist air, and then you take a quick breath of deep freeze air. So don't do that. All right, so I'm in here and I'm set up, and what I did was, like I said, you buy these flashings at the roofing department at Home Depot. Okay, so the number here, S57EA-200. That's a 5 by 7, and it's 20 gauge. That's what the 200 stands for. So 57 is 5 by 7, and the 200 is a 20 gauge thickness of the metal. It's galvanized, so they don't like the rust, so you're fine. So what I had to do was, because I wanted 1-inch units, is I marked it here at 3 inches. So I got 2 inches here, 3 inches there, because that's the 5-inch side. And then I cut them down. So this is what I ended up with. I got the 3 inch by 7 inch, and then I got 2 of the 2 inch by 7 inch. Okay, all right. So the things you'll need is like a tape measure. You'll need a sharp pencil with a hard lead. You don't want a soft lead. A pair of tin snips will be one of the things you need. And then this thing makes it really easy. Okay, and you find this in the heating and ductwork area of Home Depot. It's made by Malka. This is a 12 inch, and this is for bending lips in metal. Okay, so it works great for this. This side is 1 inch, this side is 3/8. So those are the 2 numbers I needed, and it just works out great. Now these are not really super cheap, but they're not that expensive either, and they're great to have for help you bend sheet metal whenever you need to. Okay, so here's how it works. You take your piece and you slide it into I'm going to make the 1-inch bend on this. So let me get my phone off. I'm going to take it off of microphone. There we go. And I'll set my microphone down over here. And then I'm going to set the camera in the tripod holder. There we go. And that should do just fine. Okay, so I got this, and I'm going to insert it into the 1-inch side, and then I'm just going to bend it. Okay, now if you put it down on a piece of a flat surface like this, it makes it easy. You just bend like that, and you come all the way over to almost to the ground, and that'll give you a nice bend there. Okay, so now you're going to do the other side So we're going to put it in that way, and we're going to go this way. All right. So that's the Z-shaped bracket that I need. This one goes over the lower panel. The upper panel goes into here, put it into place, then put the spring clips in to hold it up. So there's my 1-inch one, and then I'll be making a 3/8 one out of the smaller side here. But I have to cut it down a little bit more than what it is because I need it 3 times 3/8 or 9/8, 8 inch and 1/8 instead of 2 inches. So I will be making another cut on that to make the smaller one, but you can see how it works, okay? All right, so let me move this stuff out of the way because the next thing I want to get to is the survival stove, and I don't want to have this video run too long. Oh yeah, by the way, just in case you don't have the money or the time or the resources to go buy one of these, if you're going to do that, and you probably only use it once just to make those clips, but then again, if you like working with metal and stuff like that, I've had this for a lot of years, and I actually have 2 of them, and I made a metal bracket that goes between the 2 to hold them together, make a 24-inch bender. So they do come in handy, but if you don't want to do that, what you can do is take 2 pieces of angle iron, okay? So you get your 2 pieces of angle iron. You'll need a pair of vice grips. So you're going to put your sheet metal in between the 2 pieces of angle iron and then clamp them together. Okay? There you go. So now you can bend this metal right in the middle there, and you've got your bender made. So it's a shortcut, but you're going to end up having to take it out and press it down the rest of the way, just like that. You can use the metal angle iron to do that if you want, so you don't cut your fingers. But there you go. That's a makeshift bender. So if you see little pieces of angle iron like that laying around, pick them up, take them home. You know how I am. I save everything because it all comes in handy. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about making an emergency heater. And to do that, you're going to need an old propane tank. Now, I can't use this one yet because it still has about that much propane left in it. So this is the old style right there with the, let me get that up a little higher. It's got the old style star head handle on it and the old style connection here. So when you open this, it does leak propane. So they quit doing these and they went to the new style where you can open the tank up and nothing will come out unless there's a hose attached to it. All right. But anyway, what you need is to get a hold of a tank like this, a 55-gallon drum made of metal with a cover if you can. Not necessary, but it works better with a cover. You can take any metal container, even a 5-gallon metal paint can with a cover that snaps on top. Anything like that that's made out of metal, that's what you want. Now with the propane tank, the reason I can't work on this now is because it's got propane, but you have to take the valve out. And then the secret to getting the valve out is stick a crowbar through here, the side opening in the head, go out the back opening, then lay this down on the ground like that, and you can stand on that crowbar, and then you can put your, let me see if I can get this in frame, and then you can put your pipe wrench or your monkey wrench or whatever you got onto this, and you'll be able to give it some leverage to crank it without the tank slipping on you. The tank will be held in place because when this tries to rock this way, that crowbar is going to hold it from turning anymore, so you'll be able to crack that loose. Okay, so don't try adding heat to it or anything like that, even though you think the tank is completely empty. There's enough fume left in there. It turns this thing into a a bomb, so you don't want that, all right? So anyway, you take that out, and that's really all you have to do. But I like to, if I have it available, I like to drill a few extra holes in the side here, because this thing's actually going to go into the fire. All right, so you put this in the fire, and then it's going to heat up in the fire. Well, you want to get that hot air into your car. Okay, so a couple other things you'll need. Let me get this out of the way. Find yourself a piece of styrofoam. This is some styrofoam insulation I used building my cabin. I've got a few pieces like this left around, but you can also look for packing from a shipping box or something like that in a dumpster, or you could just use cardboard or anything, or even a piece of wood. But you're going to put this in the window of your door on your car or your truck, and this is going to give you a place to pass your vent through that's going to bring the hot air inside, okay? But it'll allow you to keep the window closed. Now, there's not going to be any smoke that comes inside of your vehicle from this. All the smoke is going to be outside in a fire. So when you have this tank ready, it's actually going to sit on top of some rocks, and you're going to have a fire underneath of it, and you have your wood available. Now, tip: make that area underneath it. Dig a hole down into the ground and make it large enough so you can hold a log as big as this tank, big around as this tank. All right. The reason you want to do that is you don't want to have to get up every hour and put more firewood on the fire after you go to bed at night. You just want to stay warm. So you've got a good bit of coals from running the fire for most of the day. It's time to go to sleep. You're going to put what's called a lazy log on there. That's that big heavy duty log I was just talking about. You're going to take that big heavy duty log, slide it underneath there, and let that burn and smolder all night long and keep the heat going. Now you can't do that from the get-go, because you have to have a good bit of coals to keep that log burning, and you're also going to have some heat going so that you're not trying to produce heat with just a smoldering log. Your tank will be already hot metal from the fire that's been running underneath it, so forth and so on. All right, so what do you do for a vent to come off of here? Well, one of the things that we're going to do is, much like the old coal heaters in the houses when I was a kid growing up at Grandma's house, we had a big coal burner down in the basement, and there were these arms that came off of it, and it used to scare us as kids. We thought it was a giant robot. Well, the arms were big 14-inch pipe, something like this pipe, but 14-inch diameter, big ones. And they came off of the side of that big burner, and they went up to each room on the second floor, on the first floor of the house actually, because heat rises. There were no heaters on the second floor where the bedrooms were. So you just heated up that main floor of the house, and the hot air would rise up the staircase and go and warm up the upstairs rooms. Now, there were vents in the floor between the upstairs and downstairs, so that the heat that rose to the ceiling downstairs could get through. You just open the vent, and it allowed heat to come into the bedrooms upstairs. But anyway, you're going to need some pipe too. So if you have pipe like this, work with it. But if you're not, and you have to use something else, you can go with something as simple as tin cans. Okay, here's your tin cans. Here's something that people don't know really about. The cans nowadays are made so they're stackable. Okay, so the bottom of the can right here, the bottom part of the can is actually reduced in size from the top side, the top size of the can. So if you take one of these cans and you cut the bottom out of it and cut the top out of it, you've got a piece of tubing. Okay, so now you can take that piece of tubing and it'll fit right over the next can. So you're going to want to do that to a whole bunch of cans, cut the bottoms out. And if you can't cut the whole bottom out, and you're in survival mode, use your knife and cut as much of it as you can, and fold the flaps down there so you can get as much heat flow through it as possible. All right, so you can put these cans all together and make yourself a pipe that you're going to need. All right, now making a corner on the pipe is a little trickier. Now here's the other secret. You're not going to use one with a hole like this and cut a hole inside of this tank and put that in there. You don't have to. All you have to do is attach this to the tank. So what you're going to use to do that is you use your tin snips and you cut tabs here all the way around, cut it about every 3/4 of an inch, bend the tabs outward, and then that'll fit up against there and you'll have tabs all the way around. So you're going to have to fasten that to there somehow. And the easiest way, excuse me while I turn around and pick up some more stuff, is these screws, okay? These screws have little drill tips on the end of them, and they're self-drilling, self-tapping screws. So you got your flaps sticking out of this thing. You put it up against the side of the tank, take at least 3 of them, and shoot 3 of them at even intervals to hold that up against the tank. Now you can say, well, how's that going to get me any heat? Well, when this tank gets hot, it's going to put off heat all the way around it. So if you're standing close to it, you'll feel that heat coming off and you go, oh, that's nice and warm, and you can warm your hands. But you want to transfer that heat up to your car window. So that's why you're going to make a pipe out of these, all right? So you're going to get a pipe going all the way from here up to your window of your vehicle, and then you get the fire going underneath your tank, get it nice and hot. The hot air is going to come off of there and it's going to follow the tube all the way up, and when this piece will be sticking through your styrofoam, and you can go through at an angle depending on how it comes off of that tank. You can go through at an angle, go through flat if you need to or whatever, and you can have that hot air coming out of here into the inside of the vehicle. Now don't worry about the styrofoam melting. It'll only melt if you only go with 3 cans, and that's too close to the fire. At that point, the side of your vehicle is going to get hot where it's dangerous to causing a fire. You want to be about 4 feet away, makes a good distance. So you want to have a good 4 feet of these things running. And since these are all about 5 inches each, you need 48 inches. So you're going to need 9 of them. All right, so 9 is going to give you 45 inches. And if you have a 10th one, you're okay. Now, if you have other pipe, like this kind of pipe that you can get from a stove, from one of the hardware stores, then you could do this. The same thing. You put the flaps, cut the flaps on there, fasten it to here. And what's nice is these swivels allow you to adjust the direction you want it to go. Okay, so you can turn this and make your adjustment to go up to the window. Of course, you need a little bit bigger piece of styrofoam or wood or whatever to get it through the window, but then you're going to have a lot more heat. The larger your tube, the more heat you're going to get coming out of the other end of it. So you want to have, this is a great size for this size tank. If you're using a 55-gallon drum, a metal drum, heck, you can go with a much larger pipe than this. You could probably even use one this size. Okay, so this is a 7-inch, and that will bring a lot of heat in. But for just a car, even in sub-zero temperatures, with that thing cooking with a fire around it outside, and the heat coming up off of that, this is actually a plenum, with the heat coming up off of that plenum through the pipe and inside your vehicle, you can lay in there with your skivvies on and read a book and drink a glass of ice water. Well, the ice water won't last long, it's going to melt. But anyway, I used something like this. It was a makeshift unit that I had to do. I was stuck on traveling around the country on motorcycle. I was in Wyoming, and I just pulled off the side of the road and rode up through the dirt between the trees, and I found a place high on a hill. When you're camping in a tent, you want to be high in case it rains. You don't end up in the flood waters. So I got up high up on a hill, and then I decided, well, I'll set up my tent and all of that, but now I got to get a fire put together. Well, as I was collecting firewood, I went down and found a pond, and next to the pond, somebody had brought a 55-gallon drum down there, and they were using it for a fire pit to burn their, keep warm while they were fishing or hunting or whatever. And then somebody else came by and shot a bunch of holes through it. So I brought that up, but I also, when I was rolling it back to camp, I filled it with firewood. And I kept rolling it until I got back to camp. Then I set that up on its edge like this on top of a fire with the opening of the barrel facing the doors of my tent about 4 feet away. Okay? Then I got a fire going underneath it. And as the barrel got hot, the hot air came out of here, and a lot of it was coming out and just rising into the air here. So I got some aluminum foil, and I made a little tunnel coming off of that, going over closer to the tent door. So it was actually getting inside the tent and inflating the tent like a balloon, and it was totally toasty in there. I was sitting in there and just drinking a cup of coffee and reading a book, and I heard some noise outside, and I grabbed my gun and said, "Who's out there?" And the guy says, "Oh, it's just me. I'm a hunter. Are you okay in there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he comes over and looks in there, and he sees me laying there in my skivvies, and he's freezing outside. I said, "Want to come in for a cup of coffee?" He goes, "Sure." So he came, put his gun down outside and came inside and sat there. He goes, "Wow, it's nice and warm in here." And he says, "What made you think of that?" I said, "Survival." So anyway, short story, all over with. Just wanted to cover that. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I'm not going to actually build one of these because I don't need it. But if somebody really needs to see how it's done, I'll build one. All right. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up down there. Don't forget to subscribe down there. And don't forget to share with your friends. G Bear signing off.